Connor Lamp.
And I'm Manny Lamson. This is the... That's right. And on this episode, we meet up with my friend Joshua Armstrong, who we originally met through TikTok. I reached out to him because he has a great mustache. And then we come to know he's from California. He was in the Air Force. He was a firefighter in the Air Force. Got out, became a civilian firefighter in New Braunfels, Texas, so right down the road from us here in Abilene. And in our episode, we talk a lot about the consistency and day-to-day grind of just doing what you got to do, not giving up, taking one step forward, always having to lead by example. We talk about this journey he's having with his son, who's starting to play football right now and wanting to move more and work out with them. We talk about how to get comfortable being uncomfortable and all kinds of great stuff. Like I said before, if you like anything from these episodes, please share, save, like, or follow. Reach out to me on Instagram at Manny Mustache. And we're also on YouTube as well, so you can reach out there. Thank you, everybody, for following along. Let's get this show on the road. Connor, you got anything to say?
Nope.
All right, let's go. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. Just like I said in the intro, really quick, I'm Manny. I got Josh on the line with me. And this is so cool. And we're going to dive into this more, but we were already talking about the commonalities we have, where we've been, what we've done, what we're doing that we didn't know, obviously just following each other from social media that we know now. And so what I was excited about is just going to bring more fire to the conversation. But we're just going to jump right into it. Most of you guys know we start with the 3 H's. I got the 3 H's from a friend who was in an interview with my wing commander at Dias. And the first thing that commander started with was, hey, what are your 3 H's, hometown heroes and hardships? And he said he does this to get the juices going. Get to know somebody. It's a little non-standard questioning. And so I took it as a leadership trait, threw it in my book, and now I use it to open up my podcast here. So, my man, let's do this. Like I said before, if there's anything you want to explain on them, go ahead. If you got to, if you're just like, oh, I want to talk about this, talk about it. So that being said, the 3 H's, hometown, hero, and hardship.
All right, so hometown is going to be Sun City, California. Well, they're in Riverside County. Currently residing in Texas now, so all you Texans out there, don't hate me. So heroes, I kind of went a little different with it. I named 2 heroes that I know personally. One is retired Assistant Chief Wayne Seda from Vandenberg Air Force Base. He was my Assistant Chief when I first got into the fire department and Air Force, and just his leadership style, his personality, who he was as a person, as a father, just really hit home for me. And then currently right now, my battalion chief, Jerry Van Alsdaw from New Braunfels Fire Department, he's another big hero of mine. And it's just one of those things of him leading from the front, by his actions. And I know a lot of people would name like football stars or, actors or things of that nature. There's Jocko out there and huge military presence guys, but I really wanted to hit on guys that I know personally that, I've been able to talk to and just talk to them about my life, my family, my kids, and the words and wisdoms they gave me. And I'm like, okay, it really hit home. And for those reasons, they became heroes of mine that I try to emulate and, in myself. And then hardship, I had mentioned it in the bio I sent you. I was always a heavy set fat kid. Unfortunately, eating healthy was not a thing growing up. And when I looked into joining the military, I actually had to lose 80 pounds to join. And that was pretty difficult. I remember calling my recruiter, Tech Sergeant Moreno, and she was kind of, the basic questions, height, weight, things of that nature. I was like, okay, I'm 5'9", and I weigh 265. And she's like, let me stop you there. You're way too overweight. Don't contact me anymore. And she hung up on me. Less than a year later, I worked hard. I dropped that weight and I gave her a call back. And she wasn't like, oh, okay, you could, join now. She goes, okay, well, here, let's start the process. She goes, but if you go over your maximum weight by 1 pound, she goes, don't contact me. You're no longer in the program. And for 11 months, I was in that delayed entry program, gaining weight twice a month. I had to go in her office, and if I was over by a pound, she'd kick me out. But thank God I did it. So,
So how old were you when you decided to enlist? And then another question to follow up as we talk about this: why did you want to enlist in the Air Force?
so I had just turned 18. I didn't really have a direction where I wanted to go. I was working at Albertsons as a bag boy, and I had got laid off because they closed down the store. And it was just one of those things of, what am I going to do with my life? And I started thinking about, my future when I have kids, what I want to do. And someone had talked to me about, why don't you join the military? It's a good foundation just to build off of. You could do your 4 years, and then here's all these benefits. And I was like, okay, so it's one of those things that I started looking into it. I looked into different branches, and then I stumbled across the Air Force. And it was, like I said, I gave a call. She told me that, and I could have just kind of, okay, this isn't for me. But for some reason, it sparked something in me. Like, okay, let me prove her wrong. Let me go after this. There's something there, and it was a way to get out, because I honestly thought I was just going to do manual labor work construction, just be working on the roads or doing something, because school was not a thing for me. I was very horrible at it. When I actually took the ASVAB, I only scored a 44. So barely enough to even join the Air Force. So, but man, everything happens for a reason, right? So
Yeah.
It's a blessing now that I'm here. And like I said, it's just, for some reason, it's just something that I don't know why, it just was on my mind, and then I just couldn't escape it. And I will put on trash bags and just start running, and just to lose weight. And just like, I did a TikTok of speaking like I didn't do it the right way. There's a lot of things I learned along the way of how to lose weight properly, how to eat right. But growing up in a household where that wasn't a common thing, I was just kind of just winging it, figuring things out, not eating and running. And yeah, it was difficult. But unfortunately, with the hardship, I lost all that weight. I got pretty skinny. I joined. I got, fire protection, which was my dream job. I actually looked at SEER actually in the beginning, but I couldn't swim. So I was like, okay, that isn't going to be for me. And then I saw firefighting, and I never thought that was an option. So I was in the delayed entry program for 11 months, like I mentioned. And then once I got in, started getting fit, started, feeling good. Met my now wife. We've been married for 11 years now, but as the stress of military life and the job and everything else that goes with it, my weight started creeping up again. And I actually got back up to like 275 active duty, looking at, possibly getting kicked out because my weight was just so high in the waist measurement. And it was one of those things I had to get like a reality check of like looking back at like, how did I get here? I did everything and worked so hard, and all of a sudden now, like I look in the mirror and it's that shame of what type of person am I showing other people when they think of a military member, or let alone a firefighter. So then I just started, getting back in the gym and, focusing on that. So losing that weight back down now. So twice I've done it. It's been difficult, but I feel like finally at the age 33, I'm starting to understand my body, learning everything.
Yeah, that's cool. I think a couple things I'll plug in there is what year? So did that mean you enlisted
In 2010?
2010.
Yep.
Okay, that's only a couple years after me then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, I can't imagine at 18, around that time, not knowing how to do it right. You're just like, just doing it. But what's crazy, the story you told me about the challenge of wanting to join the Air Force because they sort of weren't like into you, right? They sort of, I had the same similar conversation with another, I can't remember what podcast it was on, but another one I had where they had the same interaction. I think it was a SEER guy I had when he went to the recruiter. He told them what they wanted to do, and they were sort of just like, oh, we don't need you right now. Like, I don't know if you're serious. So that made him want to do it even more. It's more of that, like you said, proving them wrong.
100%.
And it's cool to see the similarities between people like that are on this journey of leading by example and doing better things, where it started probably really early in your life. You didn't like you didn't know it, like you look back now and you go, oh, that was a good, good leadership trait or a good moment there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to see the similarities there. But one thing I have noticed being in the military for a while is the comfortability of losing the weight to get in shape to join the military.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you're in shape when you go through like a tech school or basic. And then after that, when you get to your first job or your duty station,
you get comfortable.
That's where a lot of people gain the weight back. They get comfortable. And, there are some – it is busy, right? Because you're learning a new job. So you're trying to upgrade or you're trying to go through your 5 levels or your courses. So you're probably putting exercise on the side. But I see it in a lot of people I know where it's that consistent like fluctuation of, hey, I lost it, I gained it back. I lose it, I gain it back. And I see a lot of it just in society as well. It's really hard. It's not hard, but it's not talked about as much, the maintenance of staying at that level. Like I have a lot of clients that when they hit their goal weight, even me, I'm like, man, it's harder to maintain it because most people are just so used to hitting a goal and then they sort of like, they don't know what to do next. So they go back to what they were doing before. Yeah. They get comfortable and then months go by or years and they have that moment where they look at themselves and they're like, shit.
Well, it's one of those things I've learned. You can't outwork a bad diet. I know you hit on it a lot. Diet has to be dialed in. You have to eat right. You have to eat, clean, to feel good and, obviously to look good. Your body's going to adjust to it. And to me, I was always like, okay, I work out pretty hard. I could, outwork, whatever I'm eating wrong. Way too wrong. And like I said, just, this past year, I feel like I'm finally, understanding, which has been years of falling off the path and getting back on and seeing what works. And, at the end of the day, there's no easy pill. There's nothing, that you're going to take that is going to get you the results that you want. It's that day-to-day work, that consistency, that discipline. Most days, when I get off shift or whatnot now, and I'm tired and I don't want to work out, or I know it's going to be a busy day. Well, I have to put in that discipline to get it done because, if this is the example I want to be when people see me, it's unfortunately the public, when they look at people and they see your profession, they make automatic judgments, and it's, do you want to be, for me, in my case, a firefighter walking in that's overweight and looking like I'm having difficulties breathing or doing whatever, trying to help someone out? Or do I want to look professional, fit, and look like I could help someone whenever that time comes? And so it's, to me, I heard from someone that like the society sets the standard. When kids see you or they hear your profession, that's what they think of. My wife tells me all the time, she goes, you have such a cool job. Because in Halloween, kids are dressed up as you. You're, kids, heroes. And it didn't really hit me until my son started getting older and the way he looks at me, and I'm like, you know what? I need to be this example. I need to show, and if I expect other firefighters to be like this and to come, save my family and take care of them, I have to be that individual myself, so I have to uphold that standard if I expect that of anyone.
I love it. But what I would just wish like everybody, like copy paste, everybody listen, like everybody understand, because the military, some jobs don't see that. So like right now we're in a shift in the military where there are people that have jobs that aren't very physically active. So they don't think they have to be maintaining a healthy lifestyle because they may work at a computer or they may sit at a desk. But overall, they need to understand they're still in the military. The people don't care what their job is in the military for how they look. They care they're in the military. And so I try to tell a lot of people that, they don't care that you're a cyber operations guy that is hacking computers, and that's why you're not in shape. They see the big picture. You're wearing a uniform. You need to uphold that principle. I don't care what your job is in any uniform job, right? First responders, 100%. Doctors, nobody's going to, because perception is key, right? And first impressions are everything. So they're not going to give you the time to say, oh, I'm out of shape because I work at a desk all day. They're going to be like, you're wearing a uniform. Why aren't you in shape? And sometimes it's just that black and white on why people didn't maintain a healthy lifestyle. And one of the things you hit that I did before was I tried to outwork a bad diet. When I was, 217 pounds, probably 30 to 35, that age range, I was in the mindset of I'm just going to lift heavy or lift more
Mm-hmm.
to outwork a bad diet. And I just kept saying that like over and over and over again. I was just super stubborn. And then I started learning. And, you know, once obviously when I started 75 hard and digging into myself and learning about myself and understanding the nutrition side of it, I was like, wow, this is insane.
Yeah, it's a lot. In
It's a lot, but
genetics,
then it's doable. And like you said, it's nothing
mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
And eating healthy isn't bad or complicated.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, it's just how much they eat. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can adjust it from there. You can adjust what types of foods you want based off of where you're at or what you like. And it's more just about just continuing to do it over and over again.
Yeah,
So
it's those little habits, you know, that you develop over time. And you know, I kind of want to go back and touch, you know, when you say when people see a military member, one thing that, you know, I was told was when I got, you know, that uniform in basic training, they said you no longer represent yourself. You represent the United States Air Force when you wear this uniform. So act like it, respect it, wear it with, you know, with pride. And you know, I carry that now, you know, into the fire service. You know, when I wear my uniform, it's I don't represent myself anymore. I represent every, you know, firefighter, anyone that wears a badge, anyone that works in the fire department, volunteer or not. Because when, you know, the public sees us, that's what they expect. And sometimes they get things confused with watching, you know, things on TV and Chicago Fire and whatnot. You know, they think every firefighter is a model. No, not the case. But at the same time, we are there to serve a purpose and take care of them. And when that time calls, to be physically and mentally ready to respond. It's when they put their kids, you know, to bed. That's who they expect coming, you know, and saving them. Something happens. That's what I expect. You know, I live in the city I serve, and a lot of times, you know, I'm in the station that responds to where my family lives. So yeah. So to me, a lot of those things hit home. I mentioned earlier, I help coach my son's football team, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, and a lot of those kids live in the districts that I service. And you know, heaven forbid, you know, anything happens, but every time I see them, I always think, you know what? I'm in the gym. I need to be better. I need to be ready. When I'm at work, I'm training, working on mask ups, or just training in my gear, and it's uncomfortable. It's not fun, especially in Texas with this heat and humidity. It's rough sometimes, but I understand the purpose of why I'm doing it. I understand the why, and that's what just keeps me going now.
Yeah, you are. I'll just ask one of the questions I already had written down. You just covered it. Training in your gear. Like
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's so cool. I started doing more of it in like my OCPs. We
Mhm.
call it Tactical Tuesday here. I do a Tactical Tuesday workout where I just work out in my OCP tops, you know, and boots. Obviously, I do a lot of rucking, so I do that.
Mhm.
How has that working on your gear shifted your mindset, right? Because you could easily just comfortably just take off your gear and just, you know, wear normal workout gear.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the reasoning behind it. What made you want to start it and then continue to do it?
Honestly, I started looking into this course that is it was kind of on the hush hush for a long time. It's a smoke divers course. It started in Georgia. A couple of states have it, but what I could equate it to is kind of like Bud's Held Week, but for firefighters. It's
Okay.
6 days of wearing your gear, training your gear, you know, and then doing exercise after exercise of live fire simulations, rescues, things of that nature, you know, from in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. And it's just a gut check. And one of those things is they said, hey, you need to be comfortable in your gear. And it's very uncomfortable because it's kind of wearing like a sauna suit.
Yeah.
And it's heavy, it's cumbersome, it's restrictive, and it's just difficult. And for me, it's usually not the weight. The weight sucks, but it's there to protect us from exterior heat, right? But it keeps all that heat on the inside, so it feels like you're baking. And I know they've done studies where the internal temp is like 120, that you're just cooking inside, but it's, you know, it's being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and knowing that, hey, I'm okay. I could keep pushing, because in the reality of it is I can't depend on adrenaline kicking in and things of that, because a lot of guys will say that, like, oh, I'm not going to be in my gear. Adrenaline's going to kick in. I'll be fine and be able to respond. Yeah, you could do that, but I'm not going to depend on that. That's a variable I could eliminate by being comfortable in my gear. And I'll do like an hour-long workout where I'm just suffering, but I know the result of becoming better and being comfortable in it. So when we have had incidents, I'm running around my gear. I'm able to keep going. People need to change their bottles out. I feel a lot better in it, so I could conserve my air better. So that means I'm on the fire scene longer and being able to work more, and it's a lot of the guys, I've been trying to get them to join in with me, but like I said, it's straight up suffering for, and especially in Texas in the humidity, and it's rough sometimes, but it's one of those things of trying to be that 1% better than yesterday. And it's always, I always try to see it as me versus me, how long did I go yesterday? What was I able to do? Okay, can I do better today? And sometimes I am, and a lot of times I'm not, but it's one of those things I work on. And there is a lot of studies out where people go against it because there is material inside the gear that is potentially cancerous. And, it's unfortunately, it's the reality of the job. Firefighting, you're 70% higher of developing some sort of cancer just by what you're exposed to and the gear and everything else. And unfortunately, that's a risk that I understand and I know, but I feel like it's more of a risk to not be prepared in my gear, to be out of shape and not ready than wearing my gear and being ready. So a lot of guys that I have seen go through that course, they'll do gear workouts and they make me look like I'm nothing. I'm still trying to reach up to a higher level, and seeing what they do, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I feel like I'm finally doing okay. And then I'll watch something. I'm like, oh, all right, I need to work harder. I need to be better. But I know there's that different level, there's always another level that you could become better. So it gets me motivated to, keep going, to keep getting better at it, to keep getting in my gear, even though it sucks. But
man, so for those of you that don't know, we didn't cover my leadership philosophy before, but he already hit number 4 on there. It's challenge the road in front of you by getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And he just hit it on the head. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It is a huge, and oh man, it makes me want to obviously work out more in my gear, because in the Air Force, we're trying to look at, what may happen in the future, right? With near peer threats and who we're going to fight. Are they going to attack us here? And there's, there's the opportunity, or something may happen. We have to defend our base. And we don't have the chance to, just like you say, just train in comfortable gear and then go fight in comfortable gear. We're going to be fighting in what we're wearing.
Exactly.
And most people have a hard time understanding, like, well, that's not going to happen, or it's going to be very limited, right? A very short time, or I'll be ready when it happens. You also covered one. You almost got close to saying it. Control what you can control. And you are doing that to a T. You're controlling all the little variables in a situation that's uncontrollable, which I really like. I like that concept of, hey, I may not be able to control when it happens or what time it's going to happen, but I can at least control if it happens. I will be the best version of myself, and being an asset, right? Not a liability. I've talked about that as well. How can I be an asset if something happens, not a liability, to where people don't have to worry about me, or they can rely on me to do other things. So just so you guys are tracking, he had a couple of my leadership traits already. Control what you control, get comfortable being uncomfortable, leading by example. And then there was another one you mentioned, is 30, 60, 90. Have you heard that one before?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, so it's a concept of you going through something and other people understanding it. So it takes 30 days roughly for you to build the habits, 60 days for you to see results, and then 90 days for other people to see the results. Because a lot of times when we start journeys, or we start, we'll just say a social media account or something where we want engagement or follow, we expect it real early. We expect people to jump on board right away, right? And be like, oh, I love what you're doing. Let me work out in gear with you. Yeah. But you're like, it doesn't happen.
No.
Yeah. social media doesn't happen like that. A weight loss journey doesn't happen like that. Like I
Mhm.
expected when I started losing a bunch of weight, like everybody go, "Oh my God, Manny, you're crushing it," or like, "Can I join you?" And I'd sit there and be like, "Guys, man, I'm doing it." Like, but they are waiting. They're waiting for us to fail, really. So
Mhm.
that's where the 90-day comes in. The 90, and
Mhm.
it can change depending on your journey, but it's usually 90 days where they are going to look at you and go, "He's not stopping. He's serious." Now I'm going to ask him, like, "Hey, Josh, can I work out with you in your gear now?" And you're going to be like, "Yeah, I've been waiting."
Yeah. Yeah, and I understand it's very intimidating if you're at a certain level and you see someone doing all these crazy things. And I always tell people, don't ever try to compete against me, because that's not what it's about. It's about
Yeah.
you competing against yourself. You're going and getting in gear and you're doing something that sucks, but it's bettering yourself. And I always tell them, don't try to do my rep scheme or whatever, because I've been doing this for a year, essentially. But it's do what you can, push yourself, don't take it easy. But once you go again, you'll see the results over time. And it's I had heard it from a podcast a while ago from a battalion chief, and it's everything we do is to eliminate variables, right? Things that are within our control, and being physically fit, training in gear, doing drills. That's why we do all these things, is to eliminate those variables. So when that time does come, we're ready. We already know, okay, I've already done all that hard work. I've already practiced all this. Now just doing the action, whatever situation it is, I'm ready for it. And it's like you said, sometimes it's hard for people to jump on, but creating an environment for them to, hey, try if you want to. No pressure. There is some guys that I'll hear kind of talk and say things, and I'll kind of say things to get them riled up, like, "Oh, okay, well, you couldn't keep up with me anyways," or something, just to kind of get them a little more competitive, depending on the individual. Then they'll try it, and then a couple of them will jump in the gear with me and either say, "Man, I need to work out more because I realize how difficult this is," or two, "I'm never going to do this again." I've had both experiences, but if I'm able to help one person, kind of realize that, and okay, let me see if I could start working on this and get better. That's all. It's planting that seed, and then hopefully it just grows. You touch one person, it touches the next person, and then hopefully it spreads. And it's up to us to make that that seed to start it. It starts by our actions.
Yep. And then, and like I said, I'll recapture what you just said again. And comfort versus crisis is another leadership trait of mine, and you hit it on the head. We got to get better in comfort, so in times of crisis, we're ready.
Mm-hmm.
The variables one is another huge aspect. Control the variables to lead up. So the Army has a pretty good. They train to a lot of this, where they sweat a lot in training, so they don't die in combat,
Mm-hmm.
or they limit dying in combat. Right. So very high extreme, but you have to live like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why the Army trains so much in all their exercises, all their gear, all the field conditions. They could easily probably do some of their exercises where they go back to a hotel in the night, or they go somewhere else where it's a little more comfortable, and then go back next day and train. But they sweat during training, so they limit death or blood during combat, and is very similar to what you're talking about. We control the variables here, so if something happens, like, because you guys can't plan or train to specific firefighting situations, right? It's very hard to get those, I guess, scenarios, right? Like, you can't just, hey, the house is burning this way, or we have to go in this way.
Yeah.
So you got to find the small variables. So if something crazy does happen.
Yeah, not every fire is the same. Everything's different. The household, the occupancy, whatever it is. So, you never know what you're going into, and that's a great thing about this job is you kind of expect the unexpected. It makes you stay sharp and be on your toes and being ready for it. And like you said, the military members that are in those special operation teams know that, and they understand that because they understand the risks behind it. It's as dramatic it might sound, it's like, well, if I don't do these things and something happens and I'm not training properly, I could not come home. Or if something happens to the person next to me and some, roof falls on them and I'm not able to pull them out, well, guess what? It's not just them. it's their family, it's their kids. And another reason why I try to do things, because I have guys, kind of say things or comments, and I'm like, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing it so I feel that I am able to save you and bring you home to your family. Heaven forbids anything happens. It might sound dramatic at times, but it's the reality of, hey, there's always that possibility. There's always that chance, right? And every time we go on a call, you never know if you're going to make it home. Anytime driving, and it's working in this profession. It kind of gives me a different outlook on life. Like, it goes by so quickly. We've responded, people are having cardiac arrest at my age, and it's like, wow, like it's crazy to see, and it's unfortunate, but it's the reality of life. So, doing good things and taking care of yourself as much as you possibly can, it's important.
And then you also hit on, which I have to sort of tell people too, is, hey, you don't always have to copy exactly what I do.
Mm-hmm.
We're just, because we did work really hard to get there. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I try to let people know, when I keep doing these like hard things, I could easily just, maintain a good training program or a training regime and get comfortable seeing good results. But I know I have to be adapting myself, changing my workouts,
Mm-hmm.
changing my training tempo, training the intensity, changing the duration. Most people that I tell that I get as clients, I go, hey, you don't have to do everything like me. I'm just showing you what's available, what can get you there. Here's some
Mm-hmm.
tips and tricks. But then I also try to let them know, like, hey, there are other people in the same position as you that just need somebody there too, which is why I'm huge on just people sharing their story, sharing, what they're doing. Because like you said, you never know who's watching. There's always somebody watching. You just never know when they're watching it or if it's like an impact in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's cool there. All right, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say that's great about the social media aspect. I posted a video and you commented something about a mustache, and and now we're here having this, podcast. It's kind of crazy because, like you said, you never know who's watching. And I've received messages from people that are like, "Hey, I watched your videos and it's inspired me to look into the fire department or the fire service." And because a lot of times, I'm like, why am I making these videos? No one's watching it. No one cares, but then I'll get a message like that. I'm like, okay, like, that's really cool. It hits home of, all right, someone is watching. And if I just inspire one person, well, shoot, I'll do that and more, and it's, to be able to have that impact is massive. And it is really humbling receiving that. And I think I just posted something about, like, I almost got 4,000 followers, which is, that's crazy to think about, because I was just making just workout videos. I'm like, no one's going to watch these. Oh, well, I'm just doing it for my own accountability. But now people are watching and people are like, oh, keep going, keep working hard. And it's cool to see. And I know, especially for you, in your leadership standpoint, showing that to your guys, showing them, hey, this isn't easy, but I'm out here doing it, and you could do it too. It just takes effort, and it takes time, and it takes discipline, and that's all it is.
Yeah, that's what I try to show people on my side exactly, is the lack of officer leaders in that world. Like, there was a lot of pushback I got when I started being more vocal on social media, posting more workout videos, from a lot of my leadership of like, hey, like, you're an officer, you shouldn't be on social media. I'm like, that's the exact reason we should be on social media. Like, there are a couple, there's Mandatory Fun, who's a great officer, great job on social media, crushing it. And then there's another guy I follow on TikTok, Mr. Gibbs or something like that. He's a lieutenant in the Army, but he's got a great stuff going on. So there's a couple of us out there. And like you said, I did start off my social media to keep myself accountable.
Yeah.
And I tell a lot of people, like, when they are setting a goal or trying to figure out how to stay consistent, I go, post it on social media. And they're like, what? Why? People are going to make fun of me. Or, like, I don't want people to know what I'm doing. I'm like, that's exactly why I do a lot of mine for my accountability. Because I've had those interactions with people that come up to me like, hey, I follow you on TikTok. Like, I just had an airman here, security forces guy at the ruck I did on Tuesday for security forces week, came up to me. He's like, hey, I follow you on social media. Thanks, and I'm just like, done. Like
That's
that,
pretty
like you
cool.
said, the one person, man. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not super huge. I had another airman at Shaw. He was funny. I think he's security forces too, man. I must have a lot of security forces guys. He came up to me and his friend was when I came up to me. He says, "Okay, this guy doesn't want to tell you, but he follows you on social media." I was like, "Dude, come on over, man. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
why I do it and that's why I love talking about my commissioning process too.
Mm-hmm.
Going from enlisted to becoming an officer. I'm so vocal about it because I think every airman should have that motivation to become an officer, even if they don't want to. They want to be a great chief. They want to be a great senior. It's that light at the end of the tunnel or that shooting for the stars concept that'll get you further
Mm-hmm.
down the road. And that's sort of like what you're talking about now is you do it in your training, you do it in how you train, where, hey, I'm showing it by doing this because if it leads to this, I'm ready. I don't want it to get there, but if it does happen. Yeah, so that's why I just love seeing that example on social media where we started off by ourselves. It's usually how social media starts, to keep ourselves accountable. But that's what's cool about it is you get people out there that are about to start their journey and they're nervous. They're scared. They don't know what to do. So they just see someone else do it. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to, that's all they need is just to see somebody else.
Yeah. And unfortunately, people are always going to say something. You're always going to get someone trying to be negative or whatever reason, but it's ultimately up to you to give into that or listen to them, and at the same time, it's you control your own actions of, you laying them in and affecting you. And I had guys in the department make fun of me. My wife would make fun of me. Like, why are you making these videos? And who are you trying to make them for? And I'm like, I'm making them for myself, And she's like, oh, sure, you're trying to get attention. I said, honestly, no, it's one of those things that I'm seeing a track record of every day that, I'm working out is I could look back and be like, okay, this is where I started and this is where I am now. And when I do apply for that course I want to go to, if the chiefs ask me, hey, what have you done to prepare for this? Well, I can have a whole TikTok of videos. I've been working out for hours, hundreds of hours now, being prepared, for, the citizens here and training for this course. Like, the proof is in the pudding,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like documentation. If it isn't written or put it down, it never really happened, right? So I'm like, okay, well, here you go. Here's everything that I've done. And it's everything I could look back at myself of when I don't want to work out. I'm like, look how far you've come. And I'll kind of post those videos of when I was heavy set to where I am now. And it's just, I know you kind of say too, like, oh, why do I always flex? Well, because of where I was and see myself now and, trying to be happy with the man in the mirror. It's one of those things that I always kind of look at myself. I'm like, I could work more on this, or I'm not in the shape I want to be, but man, look where I was and where I am now. Okay, let me keep going. And it's those little things. And I know, like, David Goggins says, that little cookie every time, that cookie jar.
Cookie jar.
Yeah. And it's, I pull a lot of things from different people and I'm like, okay, how can I implement this in my life and think about it? And also too, it's like, I share with the guys that, are looking into fitness and things like that. Like, hey, I wasn't always like this. It didn't come overnight. This is years of working and falling off the wagon and jumping back on, but I did it. So can you. I don't have the best genetics, and I did that 23andMe, and it kind of tells you about like your health and your life. And one of them has said, oh, you do not possess the genes of like an athlete. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to do whatever I can to, show and put in hard work. And, it's like, people are always watching. So your actions mean everything. And I think about that with my kids. My son's always watching me. He plays football. And if I expect him to work hard, to go run, to make tackles, to do whatever it is, I need to be able to do it myself and do it at a higher level, because I know by the time he gets to be a teenager, he's going to make me look like I'm nothing. And it gets him in, excited to work out and do things because dad's doing push-ups with him. Dad's doing this with him. We'll do 100 burpees. He'll do 10, I'll do 10. And we'll keep going until we hit 100. And it's a cool bonding moment with each other. I know you do that with your kids too. And it's getting them off the game, getting them inside the gym, showing them what it is to be healthy and be active. And it's huge.
Yeah, that ties right into one of the questions I had was training with your kid. It seems like that it didn't start like that with you. You know, you were doing your videos,
Mm-hmm.
and then recently you've got the little man in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how'd that start? Did he see you do it? Did you ask him? Where did you know, like, because that's always a tough conversation that I have with people where they think I like make my kids work out with me, or I tell them to go to the gym, or I make, you know, like a lot of people think that people that work out do that with their kids. They like, you know, they're like ordering them, like, you have to go to the gym, right? So like, how'd that come about with you guys?
With my son, you know, I didn't grow up playing sports. I didn't grow up doing anything like that, working on the team. And he's been playing tackle football now for the past 2.5 years since he was 6. And it's one thing that I asked him, like, hey, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, Dad, I love this. I want to get better at it. I'm like, okay, you know, and he tells me I want to be, you know, the best football player. I want to go towards the NFL. I'm like, okay, well, there's things that you need to do to achieve that level, and I'm willing to help you do that. And I said, it takes hard work. And I said, it takes discipline. And I said, hey, I'm going to go in the garage. If you want to get better, I'm going to be in there. You want to come join? And sometimes, you know, he's like, I don't want to, or I just want to play my game. I'm like, okay, well, you know, I kind of guilt him like, hey, you said you want to be the best on the team, right? And he's like, all right, let me go get my shoes. But it's one of those things that I never want to force him to do something he doesn't want to do. Like, I'm not that dad that's like, hey, you need to go out there and play football. He loves going, and I'm grateful for that. He loves putting in hard work and getting better because he sees the results, and it's huge. I'm blessed that he's able to recognize that at his age. You know, he's about to turn 9, and he loves working hard, and it's such a blessing. And it's like I said, he'll do 10 burpees and then I'll do 10. And he's like, all right, Dad, let's do 100 sit-ups. I'm like, okay, I suck with core stuff. And we'll do 100. And he's like, hey, let's do 100 more. I'm like, oh, geez, okay. But it gets me excited because I'm like, he's pushing himself of, hey, I put a goal in my head and now I'm going to exceed that. And then he'll be like, hey, let's go play catch. And it's, like I said, it's honestly a blessing, you know, and it's him being excited to do it. And so that's all him. That's not me pushing him. That's him pushing himself.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. You know, very similar with my kids. Once I started my journey, and you know, they were sort of like most people. They were waiting for me to like either move on to something else or maybe stop, you know, with all of this to see if I was really serious about it. Like even my wife, she was sort of like, because 75 hard is it is extreme. It's hard. And so after 75 hard, I'm pretty sure she was like, oh, are you going to continue to like work out twice a day or, you know, do all this stuff? And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm going to continue to do it because it's made me a better person, a better father, a better husband. And then my kids, they've always went with us to the gym. But when it comes like actually working out like they do now with me, my daughter, she does it a lot more structured than my son. You know, my son, you know, he's 8, 9 years, about to be 9, very similar, where I don't make him go. Friday is like my son and I's morning. He knows that, and he'll set his alarm at night. But I don't go into his room like, you said you were going to go, you're going to go. I'll just be like, hey, Connor, do you want to go to the gym this morning? It's 4:45, time to get changed. He'll go, yeah, okay. If he says no, I'm just like, cool. Like, I'll go, you know, and same with my daughter. You know, I'll wake her up in the morning. Jojo, you want to go? She'll be like, no, but I'll come back and get her for donuts because we do donuts. But in the afternoon is usually when they know, especially now that summer's with the pool, we do a workout right in front of our pool. Like, I'll write up a workout. Well, like I did the chalk one, which was really fun, where I gave him like 40 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, 40 squats, and my son 50, 50, 50. And I was like, all you guys have to do is get this done. However you want to do it, just chalk it up. Then you can go in the pool. And they're like, okay, fun, cool, you know? Because they've seen really how it's helped them in their sports. Like JoJo's doing really good at gymnastics in it. And they just love that bond. They just know it's a good bonding time too. Like it's like daddy kids time. And that's where I'm at now, where I don't have to, they're at the age where I can ask them what they want to do too, which is really fun. I'm like, hey, name an exercise. They'll throw out some exercise. I'm like, okay, cool. And now when we move into this new house, we're going to try to have like 3 different level pull-up bars, you know, one for each of us.
No, that's pretty cool.
Pull-ups on there. We're going to have like an outdoor area. well, I want to have like a whiteboard for me and then like a mini whiteboard for my kids, so they have like their workout of the day.
Yeah.
So it's transitioning all to there, but it's like you said, it's not that we were showing them and they see it and they want to do it. And that's why I tell so many people, they do what they see.
Yeah.
They're not going to do what they told. And it's not that my dad didn't do that with me. Well, that generation, it just wasn't as, it was different back then. Like my dad worked, a normal job all day, came home, I had sports. It's just, that's how the 90s and 80s and 2000s were. But we're in this mindset in this good time of, I guess, life where fathers are starting to build that relationship early with their kids to help them grow up and be strong. And like you said, for sports in particular, like it's fun.
Yeah. Growing up, my real father wasn't there. I had a stepdad. He's 18 years older than my mom. So growing up, he was my stepdad since I was 5, but he had already had kids, a family. And then when he got together with my mom, I had an older brother, and he was just kind of like, hey, those are your kids. I already kind of did the thing. I'll pay bills and whatnot, but I'm not really there as a father figure. And what's funny is he only speaks Spanish. So I'm not bilingual. I'd never learned my Spanish. So growing up, he was just kind of physically there, but never really, took the time or tried to, talk to us and, be a father figure. And now I always kind of wondered, like, man, like, why wasn't, my real dad not there? And, why didn't he act like a real dad? But it's allowed me to be the father I am now, because I always think about that, being there for him at all the times, showing them, through actions, being there and being a coach when I was like, man, I don't even know how to coach football. I don't even watch it. I've never played a game of football in my life, but yet I'm over here coaching because he asked me to. And he was like, hey, Dad, I want you to be out there. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll be there for you. And I'm blessed to, work in a job where I'm able to make a lot of things. Like this morning, he had his award ceremony. I remember growing up, my mom would try to make it, but she, a lot of times wasn't able to be there. I can be that dad now to be there. And it's huge. And everything happens for a reason. And now that I'm older, and have my kids and see now everything I went through, I was like, man, I'm grateful for it. At the moment in time, you kind of mad at the world and didn't understand things. But now I'm like, okay, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be the individual I am now, because we are just a product of our experiences, right? And man, it's such a blessing now. And I'm so grateful at the point.
Another question I have for you is, for those out there who are looking, maybe they're listening to the podcast and they're trying to figure out how to start this journey or how to not be selfish, but be selfless. What are some tips and tricks you have for somebody to go in on themselves, to focus on themselves, but not feel like they're selfish? Like, what has helped you? I have some tips and tricks as well, but what do you got?
One thing I've learned, especially in the fire service, is that servant leadership, right? We're there to serve those around us, not only the public when we get called upon, but, your fellow firefighters. So being able to, ask people, and, hey, do you guys need help with this? And that's why I put a lot of things out there, because I've had guys in the department like, oh, hey, watch your TikToks. And, and they'll start kind of asking questions. I'm like, oh, yeah, here, let me show you. Or, hey, you want to do this with me? And they'll ask about diet. I'm like, hey, well, this is what I'm currently doing, and it's been working for me. But, it might not always work for you. And I always try to say, this is what I do. It's a way, but it's not the way. And, kind of, give it back to them in the fact that, I'm here to help you as a resource. And that's my job, is to better prepare you, everyone else around me, because that's what I was meant to do, to be a servant in that aspect to my family, to my coworkers, to the community.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's one thing people need to remember is when we're working on ourselves, it's most time not for ourselves. It's for other people around us. In the first responder community, in the military community, it should be really easy for us to have to focus on ourselves, because there may be times where we're needed to be there with other people. And so that's why it's super important to always understand, hey, to be selfless, you have to be selfish. So to follow up with, to be selfless, you have to be selfish, because in most of our jobs, to help the people around us, we have to be able to help ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people need to understand is it starts with you, which is, and most people aren't going to understand why we're doing it, which is fine. We're not worried about those people. We're worried about the people who need us to keep doing it, who see us doing it, so they can start their journey too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wanted to tie in there. Let's see. One more question is, going from the military to the civilian life, even though you kept the same job,
Mm-hmm.
what was it like from a leadership perspective there? Obviously in the military, where you have a very hierarchy of like business, above and below, then you transition out. What was that transition like for you, for some of the people who listen, who are in the military or have transitioned out before? How was that?
It's so going from active duty, enlisted fire protection, jumping out, going to DOD as a civilian, everything was very much the same structure. I worked with a lot of military members, so I kind of just jumped from one uniform to another doing the same job. But going from DOD to city, vastly different mindsets, different attitudes. Unfortunately, I found in the, being enlisted and DOD is guys would get selected for fire protection that not necessarily wanted to be firefighters, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, I wanted to be security forces, or
Yeah.
I wanted to be this other job. And I went in open general and I got selected this. And coming from someone that's like, man, I want to be a firefighter. I love this. This is what I feel like, I was meant for, trying to, give them that passion and that pride to take in themselves. It was difficult. You gain a young airman where you're trying to like, hey, explain the reasons of why they're doing the job, and them just not getting it. Like, I don't want to do this. There's no point of this. I'm just here to do my time and get out. And it was very frustrating at times. But now going to city where everyone's, wants to do this job, paid money to go through a fire academy or whatever it was, and applied and are trying to do, the best that they can. We have guys that, just, hey, I want people to acknowledge me and, thank me for my service. And then we have other guys that are like, no, I'm here to service other people. So we both have, those aspects. But for a majority, people that are in the fire service in the city side, man, they work hard. Their attitudes and their mentality are so much different. And also too, is we respond to a lot more calls. I went from, DOD responding to, 1 to 2 emergencies a week being on shift to now running, 10 to 18 calls, in a shift. And it's different when you see that impact of helping someone out. The majority of people on the DOD installation are usually young, healthy. Every building is up to code, so you don't get very many fires. I was at Vandenberg Air Force Base where they would, send off all the satellites and the ICBM, so we would get a lot of wildland fires, and we would do mutual aid with the neighboring city, Lompoc. And, I learned to do a lot of things through that aspect. But now running medical, majority of our calls are 90% medical here in New Braunfels, and we run ALS. So I'm going to be going through, paramedic school hopefully next year. And it's a whole different ball game of, hey, you need to know what you're doing because these people depend on you. And you get people that are very ill, very sick, geriatric population is huge here. So you could see the result of your training, to the effect. So I feel like DOD, you don't get that as much, working on the flat line, how many in-flight emergencies really go on. And a lot of it's just positioning and, okay, it's a hydraulic leak or a bird strike or whatever, but you're not really doing much compared to running a cardiac arrest like it's nothing now. And, all these medical health issues you're not really exposed to, and knowing what medications, and it's a different mindset in that aspect. And I think it was a difficult transition because I was like, man, I came from DOD. I always saw city firefighters as real firefighters. I felt like I was doing things doing the wildland and stuff, but we didn't run a lot of calls. So when I saw city firefighters, I was like, man, those guys are out there saving lives and, kissing babies and things like that. And now, I'm over here doing it, and it's been a great transition, and I think it's because I've had that pride and that love for the fire service that really helped me. If I was on the fence and joining city, oh man, I would have been eaten up alive. It's kind of, you better know what you're doing. You better get ready. You better, understand the risk of this job and respond, like you would to anyone in your family, and have compassion, care for them, and know what you're doing at a moment's notice, because they'll eat you up real quick, but it's good and it's bad. It's good because the standard is high.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys, their families are here, so they expect the person next to them better know what you're doing, and you better care about people, because you never know who you're going to be responding to. And it's kind of bad too, because I've seen guys that could have been great firefighters get destroyed because they didn't get things in time, or it was a little more difficult. Some kids we just hired, a class of 25 this past year, and 4 of them were like 18 years old, 18, 19, so very young, straight out of the fire academy, no real life experience. And to have older guys that have been doing this job for 20 years kind of jump down their throats like, oh man, you should know this. Well, you can't expect someone to know 20 years of experience that just got out, but you have to take them underneath their wing. And for me, nothing came easy. Nothing, like I said, I was bagging groceries before I joined and started doing firefighting in the Air Force. So I had to see everything, touch everything, read everything, listen to everything. And it took me a long time. And I had guys that were ruthless, but, it's now my turn to make sure that I don't do that to the person next to me, to give someone that opportunity. Because like I said, I've seen people that could have been amazing firefighters hate the fire service because of the way they were treated. And it's not fair to them, Fortunately, there's a lot of that tradition of hazing and, just kind of like, oh, well, I went through this, so you have to go through this. Being a rookie, it doesn't need to be like that. If someone that's there and is trying but not getting it, well, then take more time out of your day to make them ready, get them very prepared. And because at the end of the day, they're the ones that will be replacing you or responding to your family. So they're there right now. So help them out, because you never know. And it's one of those things, you touch one person that touches another person, and it just keeps going. It's that effect. So I always try to think about that now. And it's I'm 33, I still have quite a few years, but that 18-year-old is going to be taking my spot. It's that new generation, and it's important that they know. And everything I've learned and fell on my face, well, they don't need to do that. I could help, alleviate that and teach them the right way, or teach them a way that better helps them, because, the newer, everyone kind of says, oh, this new generation are soft and things like that. Well, every generation has said that prior, but everyone has something to bring to the table. Everyone, you never know people's backgrounds of what they experience or what skill they have, but it's up to us as, leaders, or, it doesn't have to be in a superior position. I'm just a firefighter. I'm in the back seat, but I can still know and learn about the guy next to me and help him out. And shoot, he could teach me something. And a lot of times they do. So.
Yeah, you hit on a couple things. But it's funny, my wife and I were just talking, and then I read a LinkedIn post earlier about, we are giving this generation like a really hard time, and I've done it. I've said it. I've probably talked to people about it too. But at the same time, I do need to sit back and be like, but they are bringing a lot to the table too.
Mm-hmm.
This generation has been thrust upon them a lot of knowledge earlier in their life with technology, so they have to deal with that, right? A lot of fire hose effect earlier in their life, where we're expecting them to know this because we think they've been learning at very young age, so they're under a lot of pressure too. And so I really liked how you hit, hey, while we give this generation sometimes a hard time, they are bringing a lot to the table. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing we need to remember. There's a lot there, and most of it is going to be how they get their information and how they learn, because they are learning a lot faster. They're learning more, so they may not show it because, or they may not be physically there, but we know there's something else they're doing there too.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 questions as we wrap up here. They're going to be super off topic. One is, what was it? Oh, shoot. Can't believe I just forgot it. So my wife and I noticed a lot of firefighters have multiple jobs. Like, there's a guy here in Abilene, he runs a coffee station. Another guy runs like a pest control place. Do you have your other passion yet, or?
I was doing woodworking on the side. I bought a CNC and I would do like plaques for like, military members, shadow boxes, things of that nature, kind of going away gifts. And that's what I would, I kind of slowed up on doing that with my son and being at football season.
Okay,
I usually don't have a lot of time, but I would say about 70% of the firefighters we have, all have a side job, but it's
so funny.
Well, specifically here at New Braunfels, we work a 48, 96-hour schedule.
Yeah,
so we're on for 2 days. Yeah. And so 4 days you're off. Well, that's 4 days you could do something, we're working 10 days out of the month, and I'm grateful that I don't have to stress and worry about trying to find another job to make ends meet. And I could focus all that time on, working out or being there for my kids. I could drop whatever's going on and go be there for them. So, so that's why a lot of firefighters have that. Is we have the opportunity, which is
it's just funny. Yeah, it's always cool. I love it. Like it's so cool.
I guess we can't stay still. We're just kind of like, we got to do something.
Second question is the mustache. How long have you been growing it? Does your wife like it, or did she not like it? What's the secret behind it?
Oh, my wife absolutely hates it. She'll probably watch this and she'll be like, just make comments about my mustache the whole time of like, oh, look at that ridiculous thing. She can't stand it because obviously when I met her, it was, I was in the military for a year and a half, clean shaven, never grew anything out. And obviously being held to a standard of growing it out. And now it's all kind of crazy. I just love it. And it's ever since I was a kid, all I wanted was a mustache and a tattoo. I don't know why, just whatever reasons. I think my stepdad had a big old mustache. That's kind of why. I think in the past 3 months, this is kind of how long it's gone. So it goes pretty quick. And like I said, she can't stand it. My kids love it. So I keep it around, and she's like, oh, well, you're only growing it for other men because that's the only comments you're getting it from. I'm like, well, yeah. I was like, you don't want me to grow it for women giving me comments? I was like, it's just a guy thing. So, but if I didn't have this mustache, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how all this started.
My kids love my mustache. I don't think they want me to ever shave it. My wife has given up on it. So like a couple years ago when I was pretty consistent at shaving it, I remember a day she was just like, you're not shaving it, huh? I was like, nope. She's like, okay. So I tell a lot of people, I'm like, you just have to outlast your wife on how long she's going to put up with it. And then for me, it's like the new me. So I'd never had a mustache up till like 3 years ago, unless I deployed or was doing like No Shave November, because obviously being in the military, I just always shaved. And so when I started this journey, I kept the mustache throughout it, and I lost weight and the mustache grew. So a lot of people on social media know me for my mustache. So it's like almost like my persona sort of thing. And then it is funny, like everywhere I go, my wife, it's just like, dude's just always hitting on me and stuff. And it's just always fun. She always laughs at it all the time. Because I'll be like right there next to my wife. Like, we'll be having dinner.
Someone just come up like, oh yeah, great mustache. And then her comment is always, don't encourage him. Don't encourage him. He needs to get rid of it. And I think, oh man, she's asked me every day, hey, get rid of that thing. And it's still here. It's still strong. And I think I've shaven it a couple times, and probably within a month, I'm already growing it back because I don't know what it is. It just, I don't know. And obviously, firefighters were always known for having crazy mustaches. So I don't know. I think it's one of those traditions.
It's usually the main job people will ask me around Abilene is if I'm a firefighter.
You got the stash, see?
Yeah. So
that's pretty funny.
Plus, my son loves firefighters too. Like, so crazy story. When my son was in between the ages of like 2 and like 4, we visited a firefighter station every weekend in Abilene. We'd bring them donuts.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's 8 fire stations in Abilene, and we have visited them all. We went out to them. Like, there's the rescue station. There's station 2 that has like all the antiques. 8 right down the road, and a couple of them I know at the gym. So it's like, it's been a great relationship. And so one of the popular videos I have, I don't even know, I think it's not on my TikTok because before that, but I think it was on Facebook, or maybe it was YouTube. I don't know. But the fire department let me dress up in their outfit to surprise my son when I came back from deployment in 2000.
Oh, that's awesome.
And 19. So what's crazy is my son wasn't here when I landed. He was with my dad at spring training baseball. So we surprised my son when he came home from the trip. So I was at the fire station. They let me dress up. I'll send you the video after this.
Yeah,
but it's just like a great connection we have with the firefighting department. And it got us on ABC News with like David Maurer, I think.
Oh, wow.
ABC, or is it Fox? I'm not sure which one he's on, but he interviewed us, my wife and I, about the video. It was just a great bond we've had. And ever since then, we still bring fire donuts like Station 1 here in town, which is where the main station is. It's just a fun relationship we have with firefighters too. So
that's awesome. Yeah, my son, as much as I try to get him, I always ask him like, "Hey, do you want to be a firefighter like me?" And he's like, "Nah, I want to be a cop." And I'm like, always, "Oh, my heart." my wife was going towards her, criminal justice degree, and both of her parents were sheriffs. And I always tell her, I'm like, "Oh, you gave him that gene. He wants to be a cop. I don't know why. No offense. I love, every, law enforcement out there. There's always that thing of, firefighters and cops. And even now to this day, he's still like, "Nah, I'm going to be a police officer." I'm like,
Yeah, so I think my son still wants to join every branch except the Air Force. So.
Hopefully they'll wise up one day. You just got to keep on harping on it.
Yeah. With that being said, do you have any book recommendations for anybody out there? What you got?
I would say for me is, David Goggins' book, that one, when I started, trying to lose weight, in the military, I would just kind of listen to his, their audiobook and I would just go out and start running. And, I know a lot of people recommend that one, and it's just, for me, I always kind of go back to that one. I think I've listened to it about 5-6 times now. And it's just, I always feel like I get something out of it. And like I mentioned earlier about, the cookie jar and, just finding things and kind of being honest with yourself, and it's hard to be honest with yourself. Yeah. And we make up a lot of excuses or justifications of whatever reasons, but, at the end of the day, we're in control of our own actions, right? So if we want to make a change, well, we got to do it. No one else isn't going to do it for us. So, like I said, man, hey, I thank you again. I thank you for reaching out to me. I think like I said in the beginning, I'm no one special, and being able to have this conversation with you, it's been the highlight of my day, and it's been a blessing. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. No, same. And then I'll follow up with the book. So his other book, Never Finished, is another good one too. So at first when I was reading the book, it was hard to compare to Can't Hurt Me, because Can't Hurt Me is like phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It's just so, it's crazy. But when I finished Never Finished is when it really hit me on why he wrote the book. It's because he wrote it because he did a lot during Can't Hurt Me where he was like, like he could have stopped, and I think the Never Finished is about when he did the 100-mile or Badlands one, I think is the primary philosophy behind that book, because he decided to do that 100-mile race because he went through all the success, right, of like Can't Hurt Me, doing all his races, and he wanted to challenge himself even more. And so that's why I still think Can't Hurt Me is, I tell people it's the worst book I will ever recommend because it makes you look like a pussy straight up. Like, I tell people, like, don't read it. It's the worst book you'll ever read. But it just shows you, like, you can do so much more. Like, that's why I love it. Like, when I read during 75 Hard, and that's why I changed to like an endurance athlete, because I was like, my body needs to be pushed more. If I can push my body physically, I can push it mentally, and then it's the limit from there.
Yeah, the only limitations we have is just, in our mind of, that's the only thing that stops us from ever achieving anything. And we just can't listen to it sometimes. You know, we just got to.
Exactly. Yep.
And it's hard. It's especially, you know, I know, like you said, when you're by yourself rucking or whatever, you know, it's difficult sometimes being by yourself, and because that's all you have is those thoughts. But you just have to change your mindset, and it's a lot easier said than done. I know I I battle that every day, but you know, I'm grateful that I'm able to do things. I think I made a video not that long ago, and it was just about perspective. You know, I could, you know, I did the Murph in, you know, my firefighting gear with, you know, a vest on, and it was miserable. But at the same time, it's a blessing to do it because I can do it. I got air in my lungs and I'm physically able to do it. Like, it's all about perspective, right?
Boom. Right there. All right. With that being said, everybody, if you didn't take any notes, shame, bad on you. I got my page of notes from this. Josh, my man, thank you very much. I will get some of your info after this, and I'll put in the show notes. Really quick, though, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the easiest and best way they can do it?
I would say through probably the TikTok. That's the only thing that's been probably the most popular. I have an Instagram and Facebook, but I usually kind of do that more of like family, personal stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, through TikTok, people have been messaging me through there. So
perfect. Like I said, everybody, feel free to save, like, share, follow, whatever you got to do. Another great episode, another great day. And thank you, man, for taking the time. I appreciate it. Stay on for a couple seconds after. It'll finish downloading, and then I'll get you on your way.
All right.